the full-length return of indie rock royalty, the follow-up to a highly acclaimed pop record, a sixth album from pop metal innovators, a fifth effort from an accomplished Greek artist, and a musical voyage chronicling the life of an American actor and filmmaker. This is 5 to 9's Album of the Month episode for April 2025. I'm Andrew Belt, editor of the 5 to 9 blog, and joining me is Karl Blakesley of New Music Central and Kiley Larsen, the founder of Santa Fe record label Mañana Records. So, how are we doing?
Fantastic.
Can't complain.
In a nutshell, I don't know, that was a very British response, Karl. Coming so soon after Kylie's fantastic. Can't complain.
There was an air of sarcasm in it. It's fantastic as well. So.
There we go. Lovely stuff. We're off to a good start. So besides our sarcastic or not responses about how we're feeling, I mean, we're getting our heads back into April. So before we get into the albums, interested to know what else stood out in April for you in the world of music. So, Karl, if you want to kick it off.
Yeah, I mean, I think in general, April was maybe a bit of a quieter month after March, certainly so far into May as well. Seems to have been busier. But there was a couple of really good projects that I definitely want to shout out. The first one being Viagra Boys by Viagra Boys. I'm guessing that's how you pronounce it, but yeah, it's the self-titled of sorts fourth album from the Swedish punk outfit. They're first on their own label from what I gathered as well. So yeah, they were one that discovered through Dot to Dot a few years back and have sort of been, I'd say, sort of been underwhelmed by their outputs. Like since discovering them, if I'm honest, they had a really great song that I loved called Sports. And
it's not their best song.
Yeah, it's just so ridiculous. I love it. And that was kind of like, I just remember listening to that song and I'm like, yes. But yeah, I know a lot of their like studio output has been acclaimed. I know obviously Fantano loves them, but you know, for me, other than a few of the singles, the albums haven't really done it for me, but that is up until now, because I think this for me is the best yet. It's bitingly funny, just rip roaring riffs all the way through, bit more artistic depth as well. There's like there's even a ballad on this one, or a ballad of sorts, I'd say, in River King at the end. But yeah, fantastic moments all the way through. There's some of these track names: Man Made of Meat, The Bog Body, You Need Me, but with like some numbers in there as well. But yeah, it's just an absolute blast. If you think The Hives meets Amil and the Sniffers, you're not far off. It's that kind of record, and just great load of fun. And then the other one I just wanted to shout out was one that you recommended actually to Kiley, which was Tangled Silence by, you're gonna have to help me with this. Is it the J silent? Is it just drum, or is it do drum or
Yo?
No, DJ RU. I'm gonna say it's drum. I'm gonna say the J is silent there.
God, what is it? I always have the same question. I know which one you're talking about. Anyway, keep talking and I'll get to our research.
How do you spell the artist then?
So it's DJRUM, so it's drum, but with a J slotted in there. So
I would just say drum. Yeah,
I'd just say drum. To me, that's a silent.
It's not DJ Rum.
yeah. It's not DJ Rum.
Not like pirate music. Okay,
yeah. But anyway, just a really blissful ambient electronic album. Dances between these like chilled synth moments. There's some gorgeous piano instrumentals on there. And then like to the back end, you get these like ravey like drum and bass moments that it kind of builds towards. And then there's like an 11-minute track at the end that is just like this, 11-minute odyssey that just pulls all these like different sounds together that you've listened to throughout the record. So yeah, just it's one of those ones that, you know, Kylie, you sent it on to me, had it on my headphones in the background while I was like focusing on work, and it was just absolutely perfect. So
Yeah,
shout out
perfect
on
work record for sure.
Yeah, just
Get into those spreadsheets.
exactly. Yeah. perfect one for that. And then the one last one I'll very quickly shout out as well is Leckerland, which is the debut EP from singer-songwriter Casey Lowry, who his career has been a mixture of bad luck and bad mistakes, I would say. It's sadly a tale that seems all too familiar, which is, you know, artist signs to like a big record label, releases a number of singles through that label that maybe didn't do what the label expected it to do, got dropped from that label, and then in the process he actually like lost the rights to not just his all his music from that period, but actually his own name. So Casey Lowry, but he's had to add an E into his name just to keep going under his own name, Casey Lowry. But yeah, he's managed to build his audience kind of back up again through Instagram, TikTok. He does some really funny kind of like skits, musical skits on there. Definitely check it out. But yeah, he's managed to build up his audience again. He crowdfunded this project with the idea to get, you know, a charting EP onto the album chart. And by all accounts, it seems that he did the numbers for it to make the top 20. But the issue with the charts is you need to fulfill the orders to make the charts. And through whatever crowdfunder he was using, he didn't record anyone's delivery address. So he basically couldn't fulfill the orders in time to make the charts. So yeah, a bit of he's very like, as his character, he's quite what's the way, nonchalant, shall we say, where it's in the way that he operates. But I love that about him. And but yeah, in terms of the project itself, yeah, he's just a really likable guy, really enjoyable EP, quite upbeat. There's a really beautiful like spoken word poem in there as well. One of your favorites as well, Kylie, Daywave, he shows up on one of the tracks. So yeah, just a great little EP. And yeah, I just hope Casey's luck begins to change, because he's one of the good guys. I saw actually just this afternoon where a load of touts bought tickets to one of his shows, bought like 150 tickets and were selling them at double the price. So he managed to go on and cancel all those tickets that were sold to the touts, and he's re-released them for free. So he's fighting the good fight. Yeah, he's fighting the good fight. But yeah, shout out Casey Lowry for Leckerland. But yeah, that's my top three.
Yeah, your top three. Yeah, quite the tale for Casey Lowry, that's for sure. And first mention of him, and adding the E, drum adding the J.
Yeah.
Viagra Boys just rearranging the letters. So that seems to be the theme of your month.
I had a nice theme going there. That didn't pass.
If it comes out in 2025, you have to Google the band or artist and then bands to find them, hopefully.
Yeah.
We'll get there eventually. So Kylie, what about yourself? What was rocking your April?
I think for me, April was my favorite month of the year so far, outside of the pod records. Definitely drum, as Karl mentioned, and then the three that I was super into. The first being Craig Finn of the Hold Steady, his newest Always Been. You know, as far as I'm an elder millennial, so I love Hold Steady, and you know, I think my interest in them kind of tapers after Boys and Girls in America. But Craig Finn, when he breaks off on his own, it just seems like every record is better than the last. And this new one, he's got Like you guys discussed, Sam Fender. He's got Adam Granduccio from War on Drugs that produced it and plays on it. A lot of the band sits in on some of the songs, and it's got a great narrative. All the songs it's definitely a concept record where everything's tied together. Down to the worship of classic, 70s singer-songwriters. Like, it reminds me a lot of Warren Zevon, and the album cover, the bridge that he's standing on in LA is exactly like Randy Newman did, about 50 years ago. So the little homages and stuff are fun on that one. And then, my other two, I typically stay out of music projects by actors, but April threw me off with Joe DJO, the Crux, who is Steve on Stranger Things. And he's kind of, I would say, the same as Craig Finn in that each record has been better than the last. And this new one, the Crux, like, it has no genre boundaries and jumps all over the place, and just great lyrically, which stands out to me since I'm usually not a lyrics person. So, if those are hitting home, I'm way into that. And those two are probably my most played records of the year so far. But then I also have to give a shout out to Jeff Bridges with an archive release, Slow Magic from 1977-78. I think this was a Record Store Day release, and this is just some old home tapes from that year that are full of booze and drugs and friends, and just some really, really great pop music that's just seems to be off the cuff. Obnoxious, probably my favorite song I've heard this year, even though it came out very long ago. We got a song about his experience from doing the King Kong remake. I mean, what is there not to love here, right? And then, like a couple of features from Burgess Meredith, the Penguin himself. So anyway, it's just a really fun left field thing that I know in the last 10, 15 years, Jeff Bridges kind of proved himself as a good musician with crazy heart and that kind of stuff. But it's fun to listen to these archives from when he was much younger and just didn't know this existed until this release came out. So really been enjoying that as well.
There we go. So an actor theme for
yeah, I guess so. I tapped out for the rest of the year though.
Yeah, I mean, struggle to listen to much outside of the albums. But one I've dipped into a little bit and quite enjoyed. Weirdo by Emma Jean Thackeray is my selection for the poll for April. Didn't quite win. But yeah, kind of a mixture of jazz and pop and kind of some groovy Stevie Wonder style synth thrown in for good measure. So that's one I've quite enjoyed from the odd foray, and definitely want to be revisiting. So I've got a full picture on that. But probably the main thing is the gig I went to last month. So I was hoping to see Richard Dawson. That didn't quite work out for various reasons. But then what stepped into my lap, which is a poor expression, but anyway, basically Karl said Karl, he didn't physically do that, but you sent across an opportunity to review The Murder Capital here at Alton at the end of last month. So originally I wasn't going to be going to this, but some things with work moved around, which meant that I could. And then this, which is why I didn't already have a ticket, by the way. I would have already had the ticket because it's only a few minutes walk from where I work. Yeah, worked out very, very nicely. Checkered history with The Murder Capital. Has probably spoken about that band the most out of any band for various reasons, particularly in 2023. But yeah, just great to see them. I wouldn't say Blindness was their best album of the discography, but actually after an initial I don't know, apathy towards this. It's an album which has really grown on me, and I like the new direction they've taken. This more kind of raw output and kind of off the cuff production, which they favoured this time round, as opposed to what they did 2 years ago with Gigi's Recovery, which was very kind of carefully arranged. So yeah, they're in a new era, but I think 3 albums in, they've just got a great discography. So many songs to choose from, so many which were actually left out. And yeah, I think they're a band really fully in their pomp. And it was nice to go to a Here at Outernet experience where I didn't feel like I had a bit of my own space. Having seen Nilüfer Yanya back end of last year, I mean, it's a lovely venue, but I think for that particular gig, they had way exceeded the amount of tickets they should have distributed, and that one was quite an uncomfortable watch. So yeah, that would be my main highlight for April. Outside of the 5 albums which we're about to discuss, and that's what we'll move on to now. So first we have SABLE fABLE by Bon Iver. This was the winner of our public poll, so thank you to everyone for your votes on that one. And it was actually Karl's pick for the poll, so I'll hand over to you.
Yeah, so let me start by saying you probably guessed that I'm not great with pronunciations. So I know it's pronounced Bon Iver, but if at any time I call him Bon Iver, as my partner tells me all the time, it's wrong. So yeah, my brain still wants to call them Bon Iver, but I'll try my best. Bon Iver, get the name right. But yeah, that out of the way. Big fan of Bon Iver's discography up until this point. You know, just one of those artists who is, for me, never really missed, whether it's their like folkier stuff on, you know, For Emma, or, you know, the self-titled that came after that, or, you know, the more experimental folk and electronic sounds of the last 2 records. Yeah, just always kind of enjoyed what they've been bringing. Just love Justin Vernon's other work too, in like Big Red Machine, some of his solo stuff. Whenever he turns up for a feature, you know, just always seems to lift the track that he appears on. So yeah, this was an easy pick for this month, and I think overall it's another solid album, albeit maybe not their best. But then I will caveat that by saying, you know, they're operating at a very high bar for me on that front, I would say, especially if you look at, you know, some of their other albums like the self-titled and you know, their last 2 records as well. I hold those in quite high esteem. So yeah, that said, you know, it's one of those, it's not quite a double album. I think when, you know, SABLE came out last year, it felt a little incomplete to me. Absolutely love Speyside. For me, that's instantly a Bon Iver classic. Just an absolutely beautiful song. Award season with that gorgeous a cappella passage at the end too. But yeah, it just didn't feel like a full project. And I think, you know, knowing now that it is like the prologue to the fABLE project rather than, you know, something to be taken in its own right, I think it makes more sense. But onto the fABLE side itself, and it feels very much like where, you know, SABLE is the more kind of stripped back, maybe the return to the earlier sound. fABLE's more like very much a continuation of what's come more recently, you know, mixing a lot of different styles together. And, you know, it's got those kind of experimental like pop elements to it. But there's also, I'd say the additional thing that it's got here is definitely like that soul and gospel influences that are coming through more prominently on this one. Straight away, you know, Everything Is Peaceful Love. We get this like synth-soaked like pop tune. Walk Home has got almost like a hip-hop beat about it. You've got Justin Vernon's vocals like cutting in beautifully over the top of that, you know, that beat sound. Day One, similar as well, got the kind of like gospel harmonies and a bit of R&B flair going on. same as well with I'll Be There, similar kind of story. And then you've got Danielle Haim, who rocks up on If Only I Could Wait, which is again this kind of like synth drenched ballad. And then there's a rhythm which is kind of I'd say it's the closest moment on the fABLE side to what we get on the SABLE side. That old school Bon Iver sound. It's really tender. There's like a nice delicate brass arrangement on there. And it's just a project that kind of flies by. It kind of comes in, does its thing, and then heads off. So I'd say overall, quite an enjoyable, quite an eclectic listen. Doesn't overstay its welcome. And I like, being a fan of, all the styles that they bring to the table. I like how this is the first time they've kind of done one where it's like the SABLE EP is the more traditional folky side, throwback to their earlier sound. And then the fABLE side is that more forward-thinking, genre-bending, modern style that they've kind of tapped into on the last few records. So I'd say, I really enjoyed it. I think if it's missing anything for me, I would say it would be, the emotional heft that I know that they can bring. My favorite music is the stuff that, moves me. And I think Bon Iver at their best do that very well. I'd say Speyside is definitely the track here that does that for me. And I just wish there was maybe, more of those moments and, less of the polish and more of the heart, I would say. But other than that, decent album for me, but maybe not competing with their best work.
Right, so broadly positive. Kiley, what did you make of which way around is it? SABLE, fABLE?
At least this one.
I'm getting so confused with this.
fABLE,
SABLE.
fABLE. This for me has been a surprise of the year, and it's a good surprise. And I kind of share the same sentiment as Karl, that I don't think Justin Vernon has put out a record that I haven't really liked. For Emma, I don't remember how, but caught on to that one really early, and it's got a special place, where my wife and I, when we first started dating, we would play that record and smoke cigarettes in the bathroom, that was like our thing. And so, I always have good memories of that. But then I kind of really got burnt out on the cabin in the woods narrative and that kind of thing. And I think he did a good job adjusting with the second record. And then, the last two, just taking it to a whole new place, which I loved both those records as well. And so when that EP came out, and I kind of went back to For Emma, I liked those songs, but I was like, man, I really don't want him to do another whole album of this, because it feels like he was just building so much. And I let this one sit for like a week before I got into it, because I wasn't, as much as I like Bon Iver, I wasn't like champing at the bit about it. And like once I did, I mean, I've been spinning this record so much, and I think it's, the last track on Bon Iver was Beth Rest, which was this like synth ballad that will keep the actor theme for the podcast today. I think he wrote that after Heath Ledger died. And so hitting that kind of synth emotional piece, like I remember that song hit me really hard when that album came out, and it built upon what he'd been doing. And I feel like the fABLE portion here, he kind of comes back and does an entire record of that. And so like Karl, I think there's like a ton of heart in this album. I don't know, maybe it's just the difficulty of the times, but this is the most human record that he's put out in a few records, and just big connect with it. everything is peaceful love. Like it's got those like Phil Collins drum machines on it, and From has like, you know, Bruce Springsteen Tunnel of Love era feel to it with those fat synths, and it's just, I think it's an interesting record because it sounds very current, but it also has this like kind of mid to late 80s feel to it, and you know, just that's like the music that I grew up on, so I think it hits me like in a way there. And so anyway, long story short, after the pause on it, I've absolutely loved it, and I think it could have just been the EP and then fABLE released as its own thing, because I find myself each time kind of just skipping to disc 2, even though I think those first 3 songs are really good too. Just it makes the project feel kind of disjointed.
Mm. So there we go. Ultimately, big fan.
Big fan.
But slightly put out by the arrangement with this kind of EP with a.
And I've read
album.
that you know, I was looking at picking up the vinyl, and I read it's a nightmare where some sides are different. You know, some sides are 33, some are 45, some have one song, you know, and it's just like, I'm not going to go to that trouble. I'll just stream it. Sorry.
Typical Vernon kind of
Yeah.
complicated arrangements. Yeah. Okay. So I think overall you guys very, very positive about it, with maybe different views on the kind of EP with the fABLE side added afterwards, which I think you both know I was a bit that took me a while to kind of adjust to the whole thing, because I was like, I invested what I felt was quite a bit into the EP the end of last year and really loved it. So then to have this kind of just chucked back in again, I don't know. There's something I don't love about that, to be honest. But anyway, briefly with Bon Iver, my sort of read on his kind of growth or whatever. I mean, for Emma, like just one of the best albums for me in a discography. And at the time, being at university, everyone was like picking up an acoustic guitar. It was one of those types of albums. It was a big cultural moment, and you know, around the same time as Fleet Fox's debut as well. This was this kind of new folk kind of movement. So that one will always keep a very strong place for me. The one afterwards, really enjoyed as well. Obviously, different direction, and then the ones in between has kind of coincided with my kind of less focused look at new music at the time, so I'm not quite as familiar. I think 22 Million I listened at the time and broadly enjoyed it, but didn't kind of dive in as much as maybe I should. And then I've not actually listened to. So this is kind of diving back in. The EP was the starting point. Like I say, the end of last year, I really loved it. And like I say, I've been trying to wrap my head around what's followed with fABLE and how it works together as two. I still don't love that arrangement of it, but there we go. I mean, for me, the lopsided part of it is actually SABLE being the strong element, and fABLE, there's good elements on it, but not loving that as much. And it's kind of, I was reading the interviews and Vernon saying that fABLE is the happy Bon Iver, and maybe I don't like happy Bon Iver. So that's maybe something to take from this. But Everything is Peaceful Love is my favorite element of fABLE. Very kind of Jack Johnson vibes. Other ones I really enjoyed: Short Story, Day One, which you referred to before. Can I Get a Rewind? Just can't help but think about Craig David there, even though it's a very, very different song. I'll Be There, and If Only I Could Wait. That for me is that sort of list of songs from fABLE, which I really am enjoying. I think what he does very well is create what Kylie you're referring to with that kind of late 80s kind of big synth inspired pop. But I just find that the other tracks which I haven't listed just not grab me as much, and it kind of, I don't know, is not the side I would listen to more than I would with that first shorter chunk of the album in total. So I think what I end up with is a very good album, but not one which I loved massively and didn't feel really emotionally invested in. And like I say, just back to in a nutshell, Bon Iver when he's upset, thumbs up. Bon Iver when he's happy, I'm not as into. So it says more about me than him probably.
Sounds like you're moving back to 2017.
2017.
2007. Excuse me.
Yeah. If only.
Yeah.
If only. So there we go. I think generally strong comments for SABLE fABLE with our first album there. And then we move on to our second album, which is A Complicated Woman by Self-Esteem. And we're back to you, Karl. It was your main selection. So what was your perspective on this one?
Yeah, so Complicated Woman is the third solo album from Rebecca Lucy Taylor, who started life as, one half of indie duo Slow Cub, before now becoming, this, in the last few years, this empowering alt pop icon. Just a great solo debut with Compliments Please. And then her last album, obviously Prioritize Pleasure, one of the most acclaimed albums of the 2020s so far, rightfully so. Just a dazzling, heartfelt, brutally honest pop record that I think just spoke to a lot of people, particularly young women. My partner being one of them, said that, what she says is that record just captured her inner monologue and gave her that comfort that she wasn't, the only one experiencing these thoughts and feelings. Obviously seemed to capture the Six Music dads as well with this record. Just a great album. And seen her alive a couple of times since, included in April for the launch show for A Complicated Woman. And, when she played a couple of the tracks off, Prioritize Pleasure, it was one of those moments where you could just, it was a predominantly female crowd, and you could just really see the impact that album had on women of a certain age, and it was quite a beautiful thing to see. And obviously she comes back with this one, and I don't think like any artist who has had this, hugely successful, hugely acclaimed album, the difficulty is then how do you follow it up? Which at the live show, and in interviews that I've seen as well with Rebecca, promoting this album, she's made no bones about it, that it was, the biggest challenge for her career. It's the hardest thing she's ever done. There's a track on here called What Now, which she mentioned at the show was originally called Now What? And it was kind of like, that was the starting point for this project, where it's like, now what do I do? But she locked herself away in Margate, and has emerged from, that isolation with A Complicated Woman. And, it's powerful gut punches 1 minute, it's some laugh out loud moments the next. Sonically, it kind of doubles down on like the gospel infused pop of the previous two records, but this is the first time she's had access to like a full choir and an orchestra. So it's kind of more of the same. Everything she's done previously so well, but everything is kind of grander. It's a bit more theatrical. She obviously did the show on the London's West End to coincide with the album as well. So that probably gives another concept to the record that I've yet to experience. But Yeah, I mean, for me, it's just packed with some real high points. I Do and I Don't Care was a real. I was listening to it on the way to work the first time I heard it. It was a real, like, stopped me in my tracks moment. It's like this love letter to her younger self and, you know, the woman that she's become. And there's that heartbreaking statement in it where she flips the mirror saying, um, what is it? We're not chasing happiness anymore, girls. We're chasing nothing. The great big still, the deep blue okay. And it's basically like this acceptance almost that, it's, they're living in a man's world, sadly always will be. And the best that it can hope for is just to be, a part of it and survive in it. And for me, it was just a really devastating start. But then, I think the best thing that she could have done, she does, which is she immediately lifts everything back up with Focus is Power, which is, it was the lead single for the record. It's just this really joyous, like, defiant anthem. And then from there, it's just all over the place. Mother, this tribal dance track. Get to see Rebecca's wit, like, coming through as she basically dissects, like, different relationship dynamics as only she can. The Curse is like this string-tinged anthem that's about, it's like the confidence given to her from drinking, but also the problematic nature of drinking too much, which I think is, again, a really clever song. And then Logic Bitch is definitely one of my favorites here as well. Just this really stripped back, haunting piano ballads. Again, the gospel vocals, the strings. It's just, goosebump inducing, that song. So yeah, really strong first half. Some great moments in the second half as well. Continue the same themes and styles. Moonchild Sonelli and Nadine Charbot featuring too, which obviously a big fan of them. But then, the two that I want to mention in the back half for completely different reasons is 69 and the Deep Blue OK. I think I'll start with 69. I really enjoyed looking at the Album of the Year user reviews for this record, because it's basically all these Americans just tearing themselves into 69. And I think in general, they just take it maybe much more seriously than it was intended. Like, maybe not just understanding the British sense of humor, but it's basically, just her listing all these different sexual positions and her preferences for them. And I think in an album with, like, so many, like, heavy moments, it's it's a bit of fun. It's a welcome bit of comic relief. But it will be one of those tracks that you either love it or you hate it. But yeah, and then she saves the best moment to last for me, which is the Deep Blue OK. Might be one of my favorite songs of the year so far. It's like a spiritual follow on from the opening track. Brings the record completely full circle. Probably my favorite self-esteem song to date. Apparently she wrote it in 10 minutes, which just blows my mind. But it's like just this hugely emotional, like, stream of consciousness just pouring out from her. Obviously you got the clear shades of LCD Sound System's All My Friends, which, again, like, the influence of that song just continues to go on and on. That's obviously playing in the background through those piano chords. And yeah, just a hugely powerful song, deeply personal, but another one I think really resonates. And, it leaves you with that overriding message being, I might try today, which I think, leaves it on a positive note. So, apologies for going on there, but I feel like there's a lot to unpack in that record. It's going to be one of those that I'm probably still going to be stewing over in months to come. But I think overall, where I'm sitting on it, I'd say, without wanting to compare it to Prioritize Pleasure, but I will. I'd say pound for pound, track for track, maybe not quite on that level, but I think certainly it's another album where there's not too many lows and there's some really high highs definitely one of my favorite pop records of the year so far. Yeah, beautifully arranged, beautifully written, and I can see where she can translate this to a theatre production, which obviously she has done as well. So yeah, it's one of those. I know she missed out to Little Sims last time around, but it's it's a really another strong record. It'll be interesting to see if she gets nominated for the Mercury Prize again, whether she can go one step further, but we'll have to wait and see. But great, yeah, great album.
Looking ahead to that already. So, Kylie, what did you make of A Complicated Woman?
Yeah, I've been dreading this for the last couple of weeks because I know how much Karl's been enjoying this record. And as someone that I love to prioritize pleasure too. If I remember right, I think it was in my top 50 in 2021. So I was very excited about this record too. But yeah, I'll take the other half of your long review, do a short review. I think this album is it's tedious, and when it's not tedious, it's forgettable. The piano ballads just don't do anything for me. And I think it's interesting, Karl, you mentioning like having the access to choirs and orchestras and stuff for the first time, and I think it's just kind of she throws it all in the sandbox, and I just am not all that interested in what comes out. So I liked The Curse. I liked Cheers to Me. I'm on board with her message. I don't know. I guess like to come back to 69, which I think is the worst song of the year so far. I don't think it's the humor is lost. I think it's just grating, and it thinks it's cheekier than it really is. I don't know. That's kind of how I feel about this whole album. So yeah, I mean, it's Andrew, you were talking about the rare album that you just don't want to listen to, that you want to turn off, and like this was it for me this year so far, which it pains me saying. I will be back listening to the next record and hope that there's something that ties together again. It's so all over the place, and yeah, not for me.
We've had the high and the low. I mean, I'm going to be in between on that front. Yeah, my first kind of touch point for the record was the album of the year, like figures. I was just scrolling on there. I wasn't looking for this in particular.
The critics.
The critics. It was about at the time I looked, it was about 81, and the users was like 46, and I was like, whoa,
it's like 37 now.
So, it raised my my kind of intrigue. Yeah, I suppose like self-esteem and kind of the kind of music she does is not naturally a fit for me, but Prioritize Pleasure really did, and that was through the Mercury Prize. That really did kind of carry through. It's one of my favorites that year. I can't, what was it, 2021? Then it must have been, or 20. Yeah. So yeah, that and put me on, and kind of justified all of the hype around her, not knowing anything about her career prior to that particular record. It's been a long time since, it feels like a long time since that record. I think a lot's happened. So and that could be a tricky one when you have such a highly acclaimed record, and then you take a long time to kind of follow it up. It's interesting you say that she was struggling to know what to do, and it's difficult when you kind of scale that peak. Do you kind of to go for some completely different direction or whatever? I think what you said, Karl, doubles down. That is what A Complicated Woman is for me, doubling down on what her USP is. So it's not unfamiliar territory. I can't say that I was really anticipating this one. As much as I loved Prioritize Pleasure, I didn't feel like I really wanted to get into a new self-esteem project. And probably having seen that glimpse of the scores, I thought, what have we got here? My first listen, I was a bit like, do find it a bit jarring. And then I gave it a few more listens to just, obviously park what other people think, what do I think of this? And it really grew on me. If anything, it's too big. Like, it's so, like, every song is like a massive statement that I think as a album, I find it almost too much to kind of handle. And it's not one I can eat. Like, I find is an easy listen just to stick on whilst I'm doing whatever. But I grew to actually really appreciate, the second taste of her as an artist. And yeah, I think there's some great moments. It really reminded me actually of Sometimes I Might Be Introvert, which is ironic actually, I suppose, in considering she lost out to her back then for the Mercury Prize. But that kind of really going for that epic arrangements. There's a very big gospel influence across a lot of these tracks as well. And there's quite a lot of variety as well, which I think doesn't do too badly here. I Do and I Don't Care is probably my favourite on it in total. Even though I find the lyrics so depressing. But if it's You Believe to Karl, it's just like really. So I'm kind of glad when you do get to the Deep Blue OK and it's kind of less kind of I don't know, defeatist almost in a way, because as uplifting as the song is, that opener, like, it is almost defeatist, and that is a message being shared. And she's someone who is revered and who is listened to, and as you say, with the crowd you were with, so many, maybe women in particular really take on the message. So if the message is, okay is the best you can get, girls, that is but she's nothing if not honest, and she's really, she sticks to her guns, and you can only admire that. Whether it's the stuff I always want to listen to is kind of another matter, but there are some really strong moments here. I mean, Focus is Power. Also enjoyed Logic Bitch. Apart from the outro, absolutely hated that. This blooming, like, what was it? Sue Tompkins gets given a credit for this, and it's just like, like, I hate that. because that, as you say, Karl, really lovely song, that one. Really somber. It's just, there's an emotional heft to it. And then you have this, like, really childish bit at the end, which just, I thought, what are you doing? But anyway, The Curse, and yeah, the Deep Blue OK. And then What Now, actually. Really thought that was a great track, just to allow Taylor's vocals to just take the lead, because if anything, sometimes she's hiding it with whatever the production for some of the maybe more electronic songs. You don't get that as much, but I suppose it just gives a bit more variety. But then that variety I'm probably not as liking as much. Mother I didn't like as much. 69 I think is kind of catchy. I listen to it and think, yeah, that's got to do well on TikTok or whatever. It's just funny, listening to it and seeing what she said about it, where she was like, she thought that it was something quite empowering about listing, and talking about, like, sex so openly and stuff, which kind of seems at the opposite end of the spectrum in terms of the take we have, that it's kind of a cheeky song, something just to be say. So yeah, does make me laugh sometimes, like the kind of meaning versus like how it's received, but really no pun intended. So yeah, a strange
That was better than the entire song.
Well, thank you. So yeah, strange cameo from Nadine Shah. That's really, like, I don't think you'll ever hear Nadine Shah on such a track, actually. That's kind of like a hyper pop one, but yeah, and I quite liked what Moonchild Sonelli does in that In Plain Sight song. But yeah, overall, yeah, I agree too. So in summary, from a kind of bad start and kind of a bad perception as well into one where when I do give Self-Esteem the time of day, it's good. and I really admire her as an artist, and I think this is a strong record. Not as strong as Prioritise Pleasure, and I think there's a bit of a gap. But this is one which, pop, as you know from before, it's not my top genre or whatever, but I think I struggled to find too many better pop records this year. So there we go. Moving on to the third album is Bunky Becky Birthday Boy by Sleigh Bells. And this was my pick. So, another one which is a bit of a tongue twister. I wrote it down as Bunky Becky Birthday Girl initially, but forgot it was a fully alliterative effort. But anyway, Sleigh Bells, band who I've kind of loved their 2012 effort, Reign of Terror, if that's right, and the kind of crunchy metal guitars with juxtaposed by the very lovely vocals, and that kind of yin to the yang, etc., is always something I've admired or liked, whether that's thematically with Stevie Wonder albums or even more recently like a Niles Barkley's Saint Elsewhere, things like that, where you just get that yin and yang, and obviously on a more conventional level the loud quiet, which obviously bands like Pixies and Nirvana really kind of championed. But Sleigh Bells at this stage of their career, after releasing a lot of records, this is their sixth, kind of are the grandfathers and grandmothers of this metal pop, which seems to be a lot more popular these days. I've picked out a few artists for this pod in that sort of zone, but some of the more recent versions haven't been quite as compelling or as good as what Sleigh Bells have done. And I think that there's a lot to be admired about what they have done there, and they can slap themselves on the back for that. But yeah, anytime I have dipped into their music ever since, I've always enjoyed it, and they're a band I kind of wish I'd sort of dived more into the discography actually. And whenever it comes around, it's always too late. And I'm just diving in and going, this is good, but we should gone into it more. So when this one came around, I thought, right, let's give it a go. And I think what you get is kind of the classic formula on this record. It's not earth-shattering, groundbreaking or whatever, but it's doing what they do and doing it very well. And I think, Kylie, you said it on the chat about how it's a nice time of year as the sun starts to spring up again, that this kind of music is back on the menu. So the more I listened to it, the more I enjoyed. Basically, it's hooky, and just one which I couldn't really pick out a bad track. Maybe Blasted Shadow is one I have less time for than the rest on here. But yeah, was kind of drawn in by their singles, so Wanna Start a Band and Bunky Pop. I mean, the lyrics and some of the names of the songs, probably best not to over analyze those and just let the music do its thing. But yeah, I mean, there's more than the kind of quirkiness which comes up from that. I mean, Bunky Pop is actually about the death of the lead singer's dog, Alison. So whilst it sounds incredibly perky and upbeat, the lyrics don't quite match on that front. And again, that juxtaposition is quite well captured here. Other highlights I just briefly mentioned: Roxette Rick. I love the kind of spidery electronic percussion. A bit self-referential, your pop metal dream came true. So, like I say, I think they're at this stage where they don't feel like they particularly have to prove anything to anyone, and sometimes that can be good for letting the creative juices flow, as they very much do here. And High Someday, which for me is my favorite track, where I just love the kind of urgent, watery electronica, but the typical kind of rock instrumentation, and this one just sort of grips a little bit more than the rest, which I think on a fleeting listen you'd listen and maybe not feel like you'd have to go back to it again, but that one really sticks a lot more. So yeah, about 35 minutes or so, just for me flies by. Can happily go back to, and I did go back to it a lot, and I'm sure I will do in the summer as well. And yeah, glad that they're back and doing their thing. So yeah, I mean, Kiley, what you gave some complimentary words on the chat before on this. Is that still the case now?
Yeah. Sleigh Belle's one of those, I know I've talked about it before, but my wife and I, we call it Urban Outfitters core. A lot of the stuff that was playing when she worked there, that first album, Treats, and then Reign of Terror as well, just kind of in that, any of MIA, Santa Gold, Passion Pits, Foster the People, that kind of stuff. It all just kind of, it may sound different, but it has this Urban Outfitters to it that pulls it together. And I have to say that I was not much of a Sleigh Bells fan when that album came out, and just I think it was. I think looking back at it now, you're right how influential they've been. I think it makes more sense, and I can appreciate them more. But that being said, I haven't listened to any of their records since. So when you picked this, I was like, I was curious, but I was also like, oh man, come on. With that being said, I think
Not for the first time.
yeah. I think it's a really fun record though, and I think I've exclusively listened to it while driving in the car, and I've listened to it a bunch while driving around town and kind of, dealing with the pilled out elders driving all over the place. It kind of just gets me in that zone to work through it, and I'm with you. I think, well, it's all kind of the same as Sleigh Bells does. I think the first part of the record's a little bit stronger than the back half, but yeah, I've really enjoyed this, and I'm gonna keep listening to it for the summer because it's a great little summer record.
Strong summer vibes. So a bit of a turnaround from your previous kind of perception of the band
15 years ago.
Wow. So, as the young sprog of the pod, Karl, what did you make of Bunky Becky Birthday Boy?
Yeah, so you guys know I dropped the ball a bit with this one, as I should have had a full month with it, but I think I only ended up with like a couple of weeks. I didn't get the release date right with this one, but nonetheless got there in the end. But yeah, and I'd say that's kind of the case with Sleigh Bells as well, because they're one of those bands I've always kind of been aware of them. I've probably subconsciously consumed their music in some way, but yeah, never really spent much time with them, I'd say, outside of maybe that odd song that I've probably heard playing that I don't realize is them. And
you have to have bought a graphic tee at Urban Outfitters at some point, right?
Well, yeah, that's it. or Hollister. Hollister's the other one.
Yeah.
I was thinking of Topshop over here because around that time in the
Topshop,
UK, that was like Enemy magazine, Topshop, like cool.
Anyway. The in-betweeners outfits, wasn't it?
Yeah. The hair like that, like Jay. Anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, I think I will say the first track on here, it was one of those where I thought, yeah, maybe there's a reason I've not listened to them up until this point, because I just cannot get on with the opener at all. It's just, it's just too sugary. It's too bubblegum pop. It's an earworm, but in the way that's like a little bit annoying. So like that was, I've listened to it obviously a few times since, and yeah, it's still not won me over. So at first I was like, okay, let's see where we go from here. But then you get Want to Start a Band comes in, and that brings me right back on side. Got those thunderous guitars, those chaotic synths, and it just goes all over the place. And I think, the word that you guys both used was fun. It's definitely that. Really fun, really interesting. And yeah, I'd say from that point on, it's like a similar story after that. It's just this wild ride of, great rock riffs, big choruses, really playful synths. Roxette Rick that you mentioned, Andrew, definitely one of my favorites. Scream and Badly, probably some of my other favorites on here. I mean, it loses me momentarily in the back half again. Blasted Shadow was another one that I found slightly annoying, and I think by that point, that the album's maybe like just spinning its wheels a bit, treading over the same sounds. But that said, still some high points in the back half. Another one you mentioned, Andrew, High Someday. I think Roxette Rick. And the other one that I really liked as well, Pull Strips Quiet. I think that's a great closer for the record as well. So yeah, I think you guys used the right word. I think overall it's a fun record. One of those that for me, maybe there's just those couple of tracks that lets it down. Maybe a bit of sameness kind of creeps in as well. But yeah, definitely enjoyed like the interestingly like disordered nature of the sound, even if it didn't always, hit the mark for me. But yeah, I think it's one of those where I'll probably definitely revisit those 4 or 5 tracks that I really enjoyed again rather than the whole album. But yeah, overall, I'd say I enjoyed it.
There we go. So yeah, nice summary, fun record. Sometimes too sugary, which I think, is definitely, if you don't like them, that's probably where you'll land with some of it. But yeah, good to have them back and doing their thing, like I say. So nice. Well, probably the closest we've got to getting approval across the board. So moving on to our 4th album. This is Adagio by Sstella. Not Itella. Sstella with a sigma. So this was Kiley's pick. So over you.
Yeah, Sstella is someone that a friend of mine got me into with the break in 2020. She's I still haven't figured out if she's still in Greece, but Athens born. And she brings, a lot of that Mediterranean flair and instrumentality to her. I would say, synth pop, bedroom pop, traditionally what she's been. And Adagio, the new one, really, I think fully dives into her Mediterranean upbringing with, 2 of the songs, Tavumata, that's my Greek, and Amorpho Mu, also sung in Greek, which, the records I've listened to by her, I don't recall her singing in Greek very often. So it's cool to have that. Baby Brazil, I think, is one of the catchiest songs I've heard in a while. I would love to, sample that. And, that one's begging for a remix there. And then Corfu Caravan, I think, also great. Overall, this is like the flip side of summer of Sleigh Bells, where Sleigh Bells is like the rowdy pop fun. This is the afternoon's happy hour breeze here. I think if you haven't heard Sstella before, kind of shares that the sound in the same vein as like Khruangbin sometimes, but I think she's a little more varied than they are. So yeah, I think my one complaint about this record is the runtime. It's like 27 minutes long. Like an old an old Weezer record or something that's just a little too short. But yeah, give me a little more. I'd be down for it. I really liked it.
Are you down for it? Did you like it, Karl?
Yeah, I mean, I thought this was going to be another one I was going to have trouble pronouncing. Was getting ready to call them
Oh,
Auto Some Stella, like the XL side. But yeah, yeah, this was another great Kiley pick. So good at getting these artists and records like on my radar that I would probably never hear about otherwise. And yeah, I think Stella and Greek pop, maybe not something I've ever listened to, but yeah, thoroughly enjoyed this record. Yeah, as you say, just flies by. 26, 27 minutes. Great mix of sounds and styles. Really kind of intricately crafted as well. And yeah, like you say, Kylie, now we're getting into that sunnier weather. It's exactly the type of thing I want to be listening to. I think, the title track, really like playful opener, got this, the salsa rhythms going, a more fu moo. Again, I might not pronounce that right, but that's probably my favorite song on here. Which, yeah, funnily enough, reminded me a bit of Foles with like the synths and the plucky guitars, which, thinking about it now, I guess sort of makes sense because Yanis from Foles is Greek heritage too. So it must be something in the Mediterranean Sea there.
Different scales.
Yeah, that's it. But yeah, 80 Days on the flip side, much more stripped back. It's mainly just Stella and an acoustic guitar. Too Poor, this lovely synth pop song. It's got a like air of melancholy about it. And then you get Corfu, like this lovely instrumental in the same vein. What I would say about that track is maybe it does border slightly too close to like hotel elevator music. But it's it's one that like the groove is enjoyable nonetheless. But it's definitely got that vibe about it. And then Caravan, I think, is another one you mentioned. That's probably the one with the biggest Greek influence coming through. What sounds like a mandolin or maybe like a Spanish guitar or one of those kind of instruments. But not too much more to say. I think it's just a very, very short and sweet little project. Definitely one for like easy listening during the summer, like you said, Kylie. And just grateful again for bringing, some of these more obscure picks onto my radar.
I can only echo what you guys are saying, really. I actually think it's a fully formed sounding 27, or it is a very short album, as you say, but there's so much kind of packed into it. That it doesn't feel like too brief and then it's gone. It feels like, and I don't know how, because that's illogical, but that's how it sounds to me, like a fully formed, really well thought out album. And yeah, exactly what you say. There's kind of if Sleigh Bells is kind of getting ready to go out for the evening and a few beers on the terrace, then Stella is very much that kind of on the sun lounger, too hot to move, and just that stillness in the air, with just some lovely, and I suppose, maybe calling to mind some of the European holidays, been lucky to have in the past. So bringing me back to that sort of vibe where just be say, I've been to a Greek island once before and would love not just a nice kebab. And then to listen to this, it's just really intricately put together music. Reminding me, so Adagio reminds me a bit of one of your previous picks, Kylie, of Helade Negro. I thought that song in particular.
Sure.
Which, incredibly hooky groove for this, about an obsession with someone. There's quite a lot of lyrics about kind of love on the record. But that is one of the highlights for me, as well as 80 Days, which I thought was a bit Heim-like. Loved the vocal performance on this one. And talking about around the world trip with someone. And then Close a Caravan, which again, just so hooky. And conveying that overriding desire to travel. There's a lot about placemaking in this album as well. Within, I think is it 9 tracks. So, you know, with Baby Brazil, as you referred to, Kiley said, there's a lot about place. And sometimes I couldn't tell whether the lyrics are referring to a place or to a person and using the place as an allegory. So yeah, I quite liked that intrigue on the lyrical side of things. And yeah, Can I Say is my other sort of big standout, I would say, which I found very hushed and atmospheric. With fairly heartbreaking lyrics in this one. You're the best I ever had, so please come back. I feel so sad. And it's kind of a fairly dream pop style kind of arrangement on that one. Going back to your comment, Karl, I would say Corfu is the only one which sort of dips, even though it does have the Doors-like organ sound on it, and a bit of Guero, which, you know, you don't get the Guero on much music these days, so I appreciated that. But it does, yeah, slightly not hit the mark as much as the rest of the tracks on this album. And yeah, just something completely left field, as Karl remarks, is often what you bring to the table, Kiley, and on this occasion, really has resonated with both of us. And so I think that's probably the most united now we've been on an album. Will we be completely united on the final one? So we end with Life, Death and Dennis Hopper by the Waterboys. And this was selected by our guest picker, Danny Kilmartin. Danny is a Dublin-based music journalist writing for Golden Plec, Head Stuff, Spectrum Culture, The Thin Hair, and as of late, 5-9-2. The Thin Air, by the way. It sounded a little bit like The Thin Hair, which would probably be something completely different to music writing. You can keep up to date with his work on Instagram at Danny Kilmartin without all the vowels. So at DNNYKLMRTN. Karl, you were interested in choosing this as your poll pick. And I know you were very keen and excited about this album. So probably give you the start on this one again.
Yeah, so I mean, a band that holds a very special place for me. You know, it's my parents' favourite band, the Waterboys. One of my earliest memories of music is them driving around in our banged up, I can't even remember what car it was now, but it was like cream coloured long, I want to say a Volvo, with, yeah, the Waterboys album Room to Roam playing in the car tape deck. And yeah, just over the years, as I've got older, I've just enjoyed, you know, digging into their classic albums like This Is the Sea, Fisherman's Blues, Pagan Place. And have quite enjoyed, you know, following their more recent output too. I'd say from probably about Modern Blues onwards is where I started listening as like each new record dropped. And there's been some good stuff along the way, albeit some very questionable stuff too. I think, you know, I think what I love about Mike Scott is, although he's in his mid-60s now, you know, I think what I love about him is his creativity just hasn't slowed down. He's not one of those artists that is going to, you know, live off his past successes. He's always going to do something different. He's always going to do something challenging. He did an album a few years ago called like An Appointment with Mr. Yeats, where he took poems by W.B. Yeats and turned them into songs. He also had an album fairly recently called Where the Action Is, where he even dabbled in a bit of dance and like hip hop influences, which again is maybe one of the more questionable records in their catalogue. But yeah, I just like that he tries this, you know, going in different directions. And I think in recent years, he's definitely brought like a more of a blues influence into his sound. But yeah, I think it's, you know, what I'd say is these ventures maybe not always successful, but they are always interesting. And I think I've always got an admiration for artists that are just constantly pushing themselves and their boundaries. And I think that brings us nicely onto Life, Death and Dennis Hopper, which is this hour-long 25-track odyssey that plays out like an audio biopic on, legendary Hollywood actor, director, philanthropist, Dennis Hopper, someone who, Mike Scott has always been fascinated with. They actually had a song called Dennis Hopper on their 2020 album, Good Luck Seeker. So I imagine, last 5 years or longer, he's been kind of working on like the origins of this project. And yeah, it's an album for me that is just as fascinating and as eccentric as the man at the heart of the record. Basically, as soon as you hit play, you're transported through like the sights, sounds, and like adventures of Dennis Hopper's life. And I think it's just, yeah, it's batshit, it's wild, it's all over the place. But yeah, it's the little touches too. Like he's released the album on Sun Records, which is the same label that released, music by Johnny Cash, Elvis Presley, Jerry Lee Lewis, and the fact that he's like chosen to release it on this label, which probably was like the big record label when Hopper was breaking into Hollywood. It's a small detail, but admittedly, it's one of those that those little touches just add like that another layer to the record. But yeah, I mean the music itself, in the first few tracks alone, we go from this like bare bones folk song sung by Nashville musician Steve Earle. It's kind of like this ode to Hopper's birthplace. And then he just diverts into like this offbeat jazz influenced number, which is only like a minute and a half long. But yeah, you basically go from Kansas, then you're thrown into like the glitz and glamour of Hollywood. And then we get Live in the Moment, Baby, which is like this rip roaring like blues track. Mike Scott just shredding away on his guitar. And then we get like this orchestral passage. And then we get this like really stylish tribute to Andy Warhol on Andy, a Guy Like You, which I managed to see them live. And I think he said the story behind that was that Dennis Hopper either was the first one to buy a Warhol painting or he burnt all of Warhol's paintings or something like that, which I thought was great. But yeah, I mean, it's just all over the place. And that's like the first 10 minutes of the record, but it's like that all the way through. And I think as a result, maybe like the transitions from track to track can be quite jarring. I mean, there's one towards the end where he goes from, I don't know how I made it, into Frank, which is just, yeah, I think the cohesion suffers somewhat, but I also think, as like, if you take it as like small sketches on Dennis Hopper's life, I think the lack of maybe neatness kind of works in a weird way as well. But yeah, in terms of the highlights, obviously not going to go through the whole thing, but Hopper's on top is definitely up there for me. It was one of the singles for the record, and I remember the first time I heard it, it's one of those songs where at first you're like, what the fuck is this that I'm listening to? It just starts off really annoying. But then by the end of it, I absolutely loved it. It's like real earworm. Every time I hear that, genius, hurrah! It gets stuck in my head for like the next few hours. Great piano on there from Brother Paul. Fantastic song. Michelle, Always Stay. Another highlight, just a beautiful kind of mostly instrumental track. Again, seeing the show gets a whole new meaning when you realize the person the song is about was only married to Dennis Hopper for 8 days. And he's talking about like Always Stay. I thought that was quite fun. Freak Out at Mud Palace, just heaps of fun. Daria, which is like this haunting panpipe instrumental kind of midway through. 10 Years Gone, you've got the boss turning up to deliver some like spoken word vocals, a bit Bruce Springsteen in there. And then, yeah, it's kind of towards that back end where the best stuff is for me. Letter from an Unknown Girlfriend, we get Fiona Apple, who just pours her heart into Mike Scott's words. just a devastating track, phenomenal vocal performance from Fiona Apple, who I've not always enjoyed her own output, but I think the performance she gives on that song is really quite impactful. I don't know how I made it. Obviously, I mentioned it's probably the most vintage. I'd say that's probably the most vintage Waterboys song on here. Just really heartfelt. And again, I think that was inspired by a famous Dennis Hopper quote where it was like, I don't know how I made it. So yeah, I really like that. And then yeah, we've just got to briefly mention Frank, which, you know, as a David Lynch fan, as a Blue Velvet fan, I'm annoyed at myself when you sent that through, Kylie, for not picking up straight away that it was a nod to Frank Booth and some of his iconic expletives from that film Blue Velvet. Yeah, it just makes me laugh every time it comes on. And like I said, it's just so jarring coming after I don't know how I made it too. So yeah, just love this album. And I think it's one where, you know, even if you're not overly or you never thought that you were overly interested in Dennis Hopper or who he is, I think Mike's passion and dedication for this project really kind of shines through. And he kind of, I think that's what keeps you interested along the way, or at least from my side anyway. But yeah, big fan, as you both know, of public service broadcasting. And I think this was, it was kind of reminiscent of one of their records for me, where, you know, they give you a subject matter, you don't know much about it, never thought you'd have an interest in knowing much about it either. And yeah, it just tells you that, you know, his life story through music. And, you know, you've probably sat with me on these pods long enough to know I'm someone who loves albums to be eclectic, ambitious, have a strong concept at the core, and yeah, just take you to a whole new world. And I think this one ticks a lot of boxes on that front for me. So yeah, big thumbs up.
Riley, you got your thumbs up for Life, Death, and Dennis Hopper?
Yeah, I think maybe not a full thumbs up, but I think I mean, I appreciate the hell out of this record, and you know, it kind of reminds me of I kept on thinking of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Just kind of, it had the same like hangout vibe and all the little interludes, you know, to tie it together. I mean, obviously, my favorite track on here is The Tourist, which reaches really hard into Beach Boys territory, kind of through like a weird Fountains of Wayne filter. But yeah, you know, Karl, I didn't know about the hip hop record. And so that makes moments like towards the back, everybody loves Dennis Hopper. It's got that kind of funny hip hop beat to it.
Yeah.
And I was like, where did this come from? And yeah, the other highlight being I'm with you, the Fiona Apple features is just fantastic. It's what am I trying to say here? There's so much to say about this record. And then it's also just so dense that I've gotten to the point where I've like picked and choose my pieces out of it. Although I know that I should be listening to it as the entire thing because it is, you know, the vision on this is incredible and I respect the hell out of it. And I can't think of, you know, we can go back to The Weeknd, but I think like this is way more ambitious than that was with this long story that it's telling here. And for that, I enjoy this record and respect it.
Yeah, I think fun was a word you used a lot, Karl, when you were running through it. And we've talked about, I think this sort of summarizes the five we've talked about, you know, we've referred to it as sleigh bells. I think there's that beginning of summer vibe across a few of these as well. And yeah, ultimately, I think this has been a strong month. But yeah, I really enjoyed this. Gosh, I gotta say, I think 25 tracks, but mostly between 1 and 3 minutes. And so I think it doesn't give you enough time to kind of, and then, you know, you can take that in either way. That it doesn't give you enough time to like fully kind of get into a style or whatever. And then it's like,
Yeah, I agree with that. Or a song, you know, there's a lot of pieces on here that feel like they're just getting going and then
yeah.
they're over, you know?
I think the one actually, which is one of the instrumentals, which I thought was really, really strong. But it's gone in 90 seconds. So that's Catherine.
Yeah.
Well, I love the piano from that. That just like I love the song, even though it is just the 90 seconds. But that is one I would say I'd like that to have been, you know, developed into maybe something approaching more 3 or 4 minutes, and see where that could have gone. So I get that as well, and maybe that's why I wouldn't have this up in the classics, you know, albums or whatever. But certainly this is one I've really just enjoyed. I just stick it on, and I can quite happily listen front to back because of that variety. You know, there isn't much I would say which is just kind of throwaway here. And yeah, it's telling a story. Didn't really know who Dennis Hopper was, so had me going to Wikipedia just to understand a little bit and see that he had 4 wives, and so I did actually know that what's her name, Michelle, was an 8-day, because that was something which stood out looking at the spouse list on Wikipedia. So interesting that she has her song, and yet the other 3 wives who lasted a lot longer don't seem to have as big a moment on here. But yeah, it's just good fun. And there's a bit like songs for the deaf in terms of some of the kind of
Sure.
TV commercial moments on here, particularly one about like motorbikes. Freaks on
Wheels.
Yeah.
I love that one.
So it's you get that quite historical, and I suppose that's why particularly the first half of the album or first few tracks are so of their time. Didn't know that what you said about Sun Records, that was the specific sort of company used to produce this. But I think in terms of ones which really stand out for me, Brook / 1712 North Crescent Heights, with its dramatic violin, lovely breezy jazz moment there. Like You, Kylie, The Tourist. I really enjoyed that. Thought that some of the vocals sounded a bit like Billy Joe Armstrong. I actually had to check because I knew there was quite a few guest contributors that he wasn't on there, but it's Barney Fletcher and Sugarfoot. So
I will quickly say as well, Barney Fletcher, because he was with them on the tour. Great talent. I didn't know much about him before, but they actually did one of his songs at the show. Like the Waterboys covered one of his songs, and it was really moving. So definitely someone I need to dig into a bit more, I think, as well.
And is it him who would probably be the Billy Joe out of the two between him and Sugarfoot? Because I'm not familiar with either. But
just further questions on the show. So did they play most of this in its entirety and then do some greatest hits, or how did they set it up?
It was really cool, actually. I'd kind of say, like, you know, when you go to an album show and sometimes it's like they play the album through, but it doesn't translate to live, I find. And it just ends up like creating an awkwardness in the set, because it's like some do the hits up front, then they go into the album and it doesn't have like the big finish, or sometimes they do it the other way around and it still doesn't quite work. Like if the album's got all the hits on it and then they do some at the end and it's like, well, you don't. But how Waterboys did it is they did like 6 classics right at the start. Then they did pretty much, I'd say like most of the main songs off the Hopper record, and they had projections of like, you know, bit of Easy Rider and, photographs of Dennis and all this kind of stuff going on behind. So they did like a shortened version, maybe like must have been like 10 or 13 of the tracks. I would have said like they must have done at least half of it, and then they ended on like the Whole of the Moon, the Pan Within, Fisherman's Blues, like all the big hitters at the end. So yeah, first time seeing them, and yeah, fantastic show. Couldn't have asked for more really, but yeah, I actually really liked the way they did it with like few classics, new album, few classics at the end as well.
Cool.
Yeah, that. So they've already done their tour. Then clearly, if so, which is a bit of a shame because it's always quite nice if we listen to an album and then like the artist is touring in the autumn or whatever, and then you can kind of, now that I've listened to it, I would be very intrigued to see that live. But yeah, just the other two.
September, I think.
Sorry,
I think Karl sent it to me. I think they're here in September, I want to say.
Okay, so
Yeah,
you might
great
get
stuff.
to.
Yeah.
There was did you say the Dennis Hopper's grave's in Santa Fe as well?
It's in, he lived in Taos in the 70s and 80s, and he's buried up there, which is like a little over an hour away from here.
Because one of the clips of the show during the show was Mike laying like something down on Dennis Hopper's grave as well. Obviously been out and done a pilgrimage there. So it was, that was quite cool as well. But yeah, definitely catch that show if you can, because well worth seeing. They've still got it.
Go take a look.
Yeah, shame. Well, hopefully they'll come back here soon. So 10 Years Gone and Letter from an Unknown Girlfriend. So the Bruce Springsteen and Fiona Apple songs. That 2-song run is the best 2-song run, I would say, on this record as well. So very much worth checking out. But just a lot of fun. I read that apparently Mike Scott had kind of had this idea for years. And so it's been sort of, and it's interesting you say that he's already got a song called Dennis Hopper from 2020. So it's he's now felt is the time to go and run with this project. And I think we're all quite glad he has, really. So it's filled the space with maybe what another album might have done, which might not have enthralled and carried that, you mentioned batshit energy, which it kind of is as well. So there we go. We end on a high, and with some differences of opinion on some of these albums and some we're a bit warmer on, we move on to the verdict. So I think, Kiley, if you want to kick us off with your 5 to 1.
Yeah, I will go number 5, Self-Esteem. Number 4, Sleigh Bells. Number 3, Waterboys. Number 2, Stella. Number 1, Bon Iver.
Right. Okay, they're all checked in. I think there's going to be quite a bit of variance. So 5 for me is Bon Iver, just to illustrate the point. Self-Esteem then in 4th. The Waterboys 3rd. Such a difficult one between Stella and Sleigh Bells. But I just about gave it to Sleigh Bells. Maybe at the time of deciding between the two, maybe I was feeling more in my kind of going out mode. If I'd have been a bit more relaxed at the time, or maybe been in a coffee shop or what, like, it would have been the other way around. So there we go. Not much in it, but that's my 5. So all to play for, Karl.
Yeah, I mean, it was a tough one, but I went for Sleigh Bells in 5th. Bon Iver in 4th, Stella in 3rd, Self-Esteem in 2nd, and then thanks Danny for picking it, Waterboys in number 1.
Okay. So we have a tie in first, which is between Stella and the
with 8
Waterboys. But because Kylie and I had Stella higher, which is always how we've done this before. If the nice thing about there being 3 of us is that generally there'll always be 2 of us who've gone for one artist higher than the other when there's a clash. So in that case, I will have to congratulate Stella for winning our album of the month for April 2025. The very close run thing, and yeah, very strong month and incredibly varied scores there. So next month we'll be running the rule over new albums by the Amazons, Blondshell, Esther Rose, May Simones, and Mail. And as ever, you can stay up to date with what we're up to by following 5 to 9 on X and Instagram, New Music Central via @Karl Blakesley via Instagram and Threads, and Mama Mañana Records via @Mama Mañana Records on Instagram. Thanks for listening.